it's important to focus on first responders because their world is uniquely difficult. And yet they're no less human than the rest of us. They need to be able to deal with their wounds and their access to their healing just like anyone else. More so, I would say. An individual who deals with a shooting at one point and then has to go out and deal with, another crisis that involves gore and pain. It's endless. Their system doesn't ever get to reset and calm down and come back to some kind of baseline. So baseline ends up at a kind of their normal is higher, and the distress that they live with becomes normal for them.
There's a lot of trauma out there that just needs attention. I don't think it's appreciated what an impact it's making on people in their lives and why people end up leaving law enforcement or choosing suicide as an option. Because when your trauma isn't recognized, validated, heard, and you're told or it's dismissed, it's not a good place to be.
FRPN was created out of a need to have culturally competent providers. So basically it evolved from a grassroots effort where there were some bad experiences, and luckily there's a good connection between first responders and law enforcement in Missouri, and we got reports from individuals who said, I went and got care and here was the experience that I had. It wasn't good. Can you help me find somebody who's a culturally competent, somebody who's a provider who can really understand where I'm coming from and not tell me that I need to get a different line of work.
Because I could see the first mental health go-to would be like, you should get out of that field entirely, but we need helpers, we need first responders, and we need to find ways to help us build the resiliency to keep going.
Most first responders deal with trauma almost daily. Over the course of a career in a law enforcement or first responders profession, they will literally respond to hundreds of traumatic events. Majority of people in the public may experience one, maybe two in a lifetime. So finding that right provider that has that deep understanding that these officers and these first responders, whether that's fire, EMS, law enforcement, this is what they see on a regular basis. And it's really deep-seated.
I think a little bit of the secret sauce or the secret ingredient in the FRPN is that a lot of the providers were former law enforcement. And just that right there, they get it. But you get somebody that wore the hat, wore the shoes, did the work, they're gonna get it. And there's instant validation, there's instant buy-in, and that's invaluable.
We would set up a Zoom call with them. And so there would be mental health professionals on the call, as well as law enforcement people on the call, so that we could all kind of make a group decision in regards to the people that we're bringing on. And my biggest question to the law enforcement that was on the call with us is, would you go see them? Would you be open to sharing your stories with them?
Yeah, I really think it's hard. It's hard to serve that specialized community. So part of one of the requirements for being on the First Responder Provider Network is that you have a nexus to a first responder. A lot of our providers either have been first responders or have first responders in their family or veterans in their family, and they really understand and live through, what it was like to be in that first responder family.
So most of them have seen things that they never want to share with someone else. So if they finally feel as if they are ready to disclose that, they want to make sure that that other person is prepared to hear what it is that they're ready to share. Usually it's a lot of gory details and things that they don't even want to think of, so they don't want to affect negatively someone else, so they'll hold back. I've recently heard one of the first responders, he said, when I did seek out help, I tested the waters first to make sure she could handle it before I went further.
First Responder Provider Network is exclusive to us in Missouri right now, and it's awesome. What an awesome resource to have a list of clinicians who are vetted through a process to work with first responders, who understand first responders, who love first responders.
So there's a book by an author named Judith Herman called Trauma and Recovery. And one of the points that she makes early in the book is one of the most valuable tools for processing and healing trauma is to be heard by your peers and believed.
Our mental health and our mental health awareness has had a pretty bad stigma for a long time. It seems like the last few years that it's become a very important aspect of our job.
The culture of first responders, that even in this day and age with mental health awareness, with wellness awareness, first responder culture tends to default to kind of a suck it up buttercup mentality. This is a group of people who are asked to run toward threat, much like military persons are asked to run toward threat and engage. There really is no other job or profession or career that in the same way, with the same acuity, is asking a person to run toward threat.
They do know some of those special challenges that we face in particular. They know the stigma that we face. They know that it's not easy for us to reach out and take that first step. So that they almost know we're almost more fragile in a way when we're getting that help. And they know how it's not only impacting us, but how it's impacting our family members when we're coming home from work and we're bringing that work home with us.
So I think one of the biggest things is that we're still fighting this unrealistic shame and stigma that goes along with mental health. And one of the core pieces of that is just we are working people to death. I mean, we are. We are expecting inhumane things from people. The hours we expect them to work, the situations that we expect them to face, and then turn right around and go on the next call.
I think it's a great step in the right direction, just having those clinicians that are already vetted and ready to go and kind of ready for the specific load that they're going to be taking on with first responders.
So being a first responder, it takes a toll. Like, there's a price that you pay to be a first responder, and it takes a significant mental health toll. I saw it then. I could see the effect that it had on other people, but then later on, when I got out and I was dealing with larger groups and looking at research, you find things like 25% of first responders develop PTSD throughout their lifetime. So 1 in 4 first responders will develop PTSD. 10% of first responders have contemplated suicide within the past year in a survey that was done. Since 2017, first responder suicide deaths have been higher than line of duty deaths. So you see all these things and you just realize there's a tremendous price that's paid in terms of mental health to be a first responder.
Even if they don't go into full-blown PTSD, we know that they experience acute stress every day on the job. We also know that this particular group, it's what we call more hyper-vigilant because their jobs require them to always be on alert.
Going out into the community and arresting people in a small town, you know you're going to encounter these people again in society when you're off duty. And I was always afraid that if we were at the grocery store shopping with my spouse and my children, that these people would identify them as a way to get back at me. So it caused me not to join them when they went shopping. So I stayed back home.
We're in kind of smaller towns, and we will frequently go to the same grocery stores, the same restaurants, the same daycares that people that we come across in a law enforcement action, and that can be kind of awkward. Sometimes those people don't necessarily agree with the actions that we took, and maybe they're upset. So essentially you're by yourself to protect your family, and that can set off that hypervigilance, destabilization in your nervous system.
Yeah, we put on this aura that we're these tough, brave people, and on the inside, many times we're actually hurting, and we don't want anybody to see it or know it.
I got my paramedic when I was 19. I started having some really shitty calls right after I got my medic. thought that I was dealing with them in a pretty healthy way, buried them down in my brain, because that's what everybody else told me to do. It wasn't until I ran a fire where one of my fire service idols was severely injured, and I had to intubate him. He was burnt, had airway burns. I transported him to the local trauma center, and then had to transport him to the regional burn center after that. Everything was fine. Everything was great. I buried it again. And then one day I burned my eggs. And the egg burning smell made it smell like the back of the ambulance with Jeff there. And it just took me to this fucking dark place that all I wanted to do was cry my eyes out, and I couldn't figure why. I didn't understand. I never had that happen to me before. So I'm like, well, fuck it. It's fine. Not that big of a deal. Just a bad day. And then it started happening more often. I'd see Jeff. And yeah, it's awesome. He's back to work. Everything's good. But it'd take me right back there, to the back of that ambulance, on the highway, holding his hand while he's intubated, telling him that everything's okay. His wife's up front. It'll all be fine. I had a person that I considered a pretty good friend pull me aside in the lieutenant's office at work and just said, "Something's wrong with you. What's up?" And broke down and cried for about 2 hours and realized that, man, I really need some help with this. So I started the journey of trying to find a clinician. And that was a pretty difficult journey for me. I can't remember how many people I actually talked to that I walked in, and after 10 minutes I got up and left because it just wasn't gonna work. Until I met this clinician named Tim. And the first words out of his mouth when I walked in is, "What the fuck's up, dude?" I'm like, man, I think I'm gonna mesh with this dude pretty well. We get to talking. He's a previous paramedic.
I referred an employee to some supportive services, peer support, and a post-critical incident seminar, and that employee later thanked me and told me that at one point he was in his patrol car with his gun in his lap, and he was thinking about taking his life. But we got him some help, and he's in a lot better place today than back then.
But I would say the ones that have stuck with me the most, that I've had to seek help for, are suicides. They're difficult because you don't know what that person was going through, and a lot of us want to say that person was selfish for doing this, but you don't know what that person was going through, and especially when it's younger adults, like that, they have so much more life to live, and they thought that this was the only answer, that's the only way out was to end it all, when maybe all that person was needed someone to talk to. We work in a college town here in Kirksville, and I've worked several college-age suicides, and it's difficult.
We're worried about what's going on in our brain getting out to the people that we work with, or even worse, sometimes administration, right? But building that trust with the clinician and having trust in them is so important for us to even be able to delayer ourselves and to discuss what's actually the issue.
Letting them know from the beginning. I always say, I want to let you know that what happens in this room, it's like Vegas, it stays in this room. But unlike Vegas, Really, it genuinely does. And that the reason that isn't that what you have to share is something that no one should ever know, but this is your private life, and you have a right to your private life, and this is a safe place to share whatever you need, knowing it will not leave these walls.
I sometimes want to lighten the mood sometimes, and I tell them that's why my hair is curly, because I keep all the secrets to myself. But that's really important. They need to know that I'm not going to be sharing with other people. So I never want them to feel as if any of their secrets would be told to somebody else.
Having trust in them only makes the process 10 times better. And if they have just a basic understanding of our job, or they work with us, they've done ride-alongs, it just makes the process so much simpler.
When someone's reluctant, scared to take a risk, the more of the obstacles that we can remove in the process of giving it a try, the more likely they are to follow through. So I think the FRPN and its mission is really just, that's what it's about. Let's get the logistics, the money, the confidence that these therapists know what the hell they're doing. Let's get that stuff settled so that we kind of smooth the path as much as we can for a first responder and or his or her family to get involved with the help that they need and get their lives back.
They're just all so great. And they don't always see it. And their families love them so much. But I want them to give their families the best of them. And to unload some of the baggage is important. It's so very different for everybody. But truly, from me, I want to make sure that if they're ready to take the cape off, if they're ready to do the hard work, that they get that chance to do that. So if it is helping or paying for, I want to make sure that we get that done. I can tell you that for me, it's a legacy for me. My daughter is a first responder, and I know that my granddaughters will follow along with that as well. So not only do I build it for the entire state and all the first responders, but on a personal note, I'm building it for them too. But extremely proud that the state of Missouri has a network built for the people who have the back of everybody. And we have their back when they need us.
It's worth a call, and it's anonymous. It's not going to get back to your department, so at least give it a shot. Reach out because you have nothing to lose.
I would say you matter. You are loved, and we're here for you. I'm here for you. Someone else is here for you, and you are worth it.